Hey guys, this is Rock King and welcome back to the channel. I've been away for a little bit, had a couple of videos posted. Those are actually from when I had the engine failure on the Corvette. The diagnosis on the Corvette was the main bearing spun. So the number 4-cylinder piston dropped. There's a safety mechanism there so it doesn't get under pressure, but that dropped down. There was some scoring in the number 4-cylinder. Metal in the pan, so basically deemed a broken engine. So I worked with the Chevy dealer, local Chevy dealer in Hastings, and they ordered a new block and they got that installed in less than 2 weeks. So I picked it up not too long ago, drove it back, getting miles put on it. I'm still on the original oil. You are supposed to drive it for 500 miles and it heats everything up and pulls everything out, and you're supposed to change it out, and then you can actually start driving it like you want to drive it. So I've been limited for the last week and a half to about 3,500 RPMs. That is not as easy as it sounds. So I've been dying to get the miles on it and get the oil changed, and do some other things as well. So basically, from what my understanding is, the oil temperature got too hot, there was too much friction, and the main bearing spun on this particular engine. So it doesn't sound like it's too uncommon for these 15s and 16s to have heat problems. So I did a lot of research on that, and there's one really good way to reduce the oil temperature of the engine during operating, especially if you're going to do any kind of spirited driving, autocross, racetrack, stuff like that. So a couple of things that the Chevy dealer gave to me and said you should be running a different oil, not a different oil type. They still recommend the mobile one, but it was a 15 weight 50. That's a lot higher than recommended. I think it's closer to what they run on the ZR1s now. I think that might be like 0 weight 40. But again, this gets a little bit more protection for the engine. Things they didn't tell me about that I wasn't aware of until this one, but the automatic transmissions sometimes have problems in these 15 and 16s, the A8. And what they found is it wasn't a temperature thing, but it was actually the fluid that they were using. They made it sound like to me that they put a certain fluid in there so it would make a nice, gentle, soft shift. And it was later determined by GM or Chevrolet that go ahead and put the transmission fluid in. It's going to protect it the best. It may not be the most comfortable shifting, so it shifts a little bit harder, but it protects the A8 a little bit better. So I guess that's everywhere. Everybody knows about it. They've changed formulas. They went to the new automatic transmission. So while I had the engine changed out, I went and had them service the transmission fluid in there. So we changed that out. We have the new fluid in there. I had them do the brakes because the person before me, I think, raced it. So the brake fluid probably needed to be changed. But anyway, I'm back to scratch on that. One other thing I wanted to do was the differential fluid, but they weren't unable to get the fluid in time. And I didn't want to extend the duration of how long they had the car, so I brought it back. So I'll do that here in the near future as well. Until then, there's some other things that I read about that can really help with oil temperatures, keeping things cool. And one of those things are on the table here. So what I bought was these are for the catalytic converter. They are heat wraps for the catalytic converter. The reason why these are important is because the catalytic converter is kind of that point of heat source where things get built up. And what I read is that the catalytic converter sits next to the oil cooler in this particular year model, the Z06, and it is. We had it up on the lift at the Chevy dealer, and I saw that it was probably about 3 inches away. So your high heat catalytic converter is right next to your oil cooler. So I did a little bit of research. I saw a video, and I think I read a post saying that you can reduce your oil temperature, operating temperature, by almost 60 degrees by putting the heat shield around the catalytic converter and protecting the oil cooler. There's also another thing that you can put on the oil cooler, and it's like a fins, and I don't think it's for airflow so much. It's kind of like a part in a computer where it has the big fins on top of the processor. It's like a heat sink. It allows it to kind of pull it out a little bit more. I haven't gotten that yet. I'm going to just watch the temperatures after this. But I got one of these for the side on the oil cooler, and then I got a second one for the side. It sits over the oil lines, so the return oil lines and the out oil lines. And those have a little bit of a heat shield, like a little bit of a wrap on them. But you're not supposed to wrap the oil lines. GM did a little bit, but you're supposed to have airflow over those lines too. So I bought another one of those heat shields for the catalytic converter to protect the oil lines as well. So I'll be putting both of those on. And then I also bought some tape. And the tape portion of it is to go around. So the A8 transmission is towards the back of the car, and the exhaust pipes run right next to it on both sides. And what I want to do is I want to do the heat shield tape on both sides of those as well. This doesn't protect the driver at all. There's still heat that comes into the cabin, and I'm fine with that. I mean, it doesn't bother me at all. But I do want the components to be protected, so I'm going to try to protect the engine with the heat shields, and then also do heat shields around the A8 transmission. So I'm hoping, even with just those two things, that'll help quite a bit. And behind me, you might also see these air ducts. These air ducts connect to the Z06, and for some reason mine doesn't have these. I don't know if it got taken off prior, but these help bring air to the front brakes. When I was at the track and I was doing some competition, the instructor was telling me I had ran for a while and then I parked, and he says, well, why don't you roll that a little bit further up? So I don't know if it was just hot or the brake pads. He was afraid they were going to seize up to the rotors or what. But he says, roll them forward. So I did that, rolled it forward without touching the brakes. But there must have definitely been a heat problem there. I didn't really notice any brake fade. I did smell the brakes a little bit at the track, which I think is probably fairly normal. But these air ducts will get some more air onto those front rotors and onto those front pads. So hopefully that'll cool it down a little bit. So I'll be putting those on as well. So I did buy a few parts to add to the car, but again, a lot of it is just for heat reasons. I'm trying to keep everything nice and cool. As I continue on with this process, I'll see if I still have heat problems. I might go to like maybe a radiator or stuff like that. But at this point, since I'm still under warranty, and thank goodness it was under warranty for the engine, because that was not cheap. I think the engine itself was 18 grand. That's what the dealer shared with me. But if I have to do more to it later to keep it cool, I'm gonna probably talk to a speed shop and see if they've dealt with these 15, 16 Z06s and see if there's anything else I can do to cool it down. Or if you guys know, let me know as well. I had a couple other things in mind, but I want to see what this does first before I move even further with it. So at this point, we're almost at the 500 mile mark. So I'm going to do my oil change. I'm going to do my heat wraps. I'm going to do my air ducts for the brakes, and that's what's coming up next. And then in the next few days, so 5 days away from now, I'm back to another autocross. This time the autocross is actually at a municipal airport, so I'm hoping the tarmac's a little bit smoother. It's still a low speed, but I'm hoping that the surface itself is going to be a little bit better for the Corvette. Anyway, just keep watching. I'm going to be doing oil change. I'll be doing the air ducts, and we'll just keep going on it. Thanks, guys.